Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first Leaders Live with me, Councillor Millie Earl. I'm the leader of Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council. And today I'm joined by my deputy leader and the portfolio holder for finance, Councillor Mike Cox. And we're going to be talking about money matters. And this includes things around the council's budget and our finance. But we're also going to talk about some of the winter support that's available to residents, particularly if you're struggling, and we'll be here to answer your questions. Some have been pre-submitted, but we'll also talk about try and answer some of the ones later on which are coming in live. So first, let's talk about local government finance. Very fun topic, although to be honest, it's not so much for us as councillors, because we're the ones who have to make decisions around how your council tax money is spent. At the moment, we are working out what we're going to do with our council budget. It will come to council in February, and it's all about how we prioritise the services that are most needed by residents. So Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about the budget and the budget consultation?
Thanks very much, Millie. Yes, as everybody knows, councils up and down the country have been facing an unprecedented funding crisis to do with council tax. Every council, the costs are increasing far more than the revenue that we're able to bring in through council tax, and that's a challenge for every single council up and down the country. We're not different from anybody else. In terms of BCP, we've actually achieved about £120 million since BCP came together in terms of savings and efficiencies, but we are working and fighting very hard, particularly with the MPs, to get a fairer funding deal for BCP. But this February, we have to set a budget. We have to set a legal budget which is balanced, and I'm sure people may remember a year ago, when we set a budget for the first time in this administration, and we managed to balance it at the time over the 4-year period. However, the winds of change blow constantly, and what we're faced with at the moment is another gap which we need to fill, and therefore there will be savings that we need to make in the current year. Just to give you an example, the government recently did a budget, which I'm sure many people are aware of, and that's added another £10 million to our problems, and therefore we must make allowances for that, and we need to make some savings as a result. We're hoping the government will compensate us somewhat, but maybe not all. So over to you, Millie, to do with how to help people with the cost of living.
Thank you, Mike. So I think what's really important about the government's budget is that there were some quite significant changes. For example, the cut to winter fuel allowance is going to have an impact on our communities. And it was very clear that we're not out of the woods yet in terms of cost of living. But I think what our role as a council is really to support residents through that cost of living crisis. And we actually do have support and advice available. So one of the things that the current government did extend was the Household Support Fund, which is a lifeline for people who are really struggling. It's quite a significant amount of money that we get through government, which we then work with partners both within the community, so sort of our community groups and charities, but we also work with Citizens Advice, who are there to help residents, particularly if they're struggling with food and bills and rent and that kind of thing, to be able to give out grants and also give out advice on how to maximise income, but also to look at how you can best save money and best use your finances to the best of your ability to make the most out of them. So I just wanted to talk briefly on the Access to Food Partnership, which is there for people who are really struggling for food in particular. We know that hidden hunger is a big issue, not just across BCP, but across the country, especially as food bills are going up and up and up. And I'm quite shocked when I go to the supermarket and see what my final bill is. And so for people who are really struggling, there is support available for you. And whether that is things like our food banks, our community fridges, community meals, there's lots of information on our website if you look up Access to Food Partnership, which will show you a map of where find support. We also have across BCP a range of warm and welcoming spaces. So our libraries become those. We also have some of our leisure centres. I think there are 50 altogether. So in the daytimes, if you are struggling to heat your home or you want to save some money on your bills, then please do make use of the council facilities that are available to you. So you can have, maybe a cup of tea, a meal, or just stay somewhere warm, rather than having that conflict over whether to put your heating on or not. And I just wanted to say as well, the winter fuel allowance, which has been cut. There are a lot of people, we are aware there are a lot of people, and I was actually in the House of Commons yesterday listening to this be discussed. There are a lot of people who are eligible for pension credit who are not claiming it. So if you are over the state pension age, then please do have a look and see if you're eligible, because then you will continue to be able to receive that amount. In fact, I think it's around £3,900 that you can get additional if you are eligible for it. So make sure you go onto the government website and have a look and see if you can claim pension credit. The other element of the Household Support Fund that I wanted to talk about was really around our grant scheme for community groups in our area who are helping people with the cost of living. We work with Dorset Community Foundation to provide those grants. They can be up to £10,000, which is a huge amount for our food banks, community fridges, those sorts of organisations, to help communities with the cost of living, because no one quite knows how to help those communities apart from the people who are in them, working with them on the front line every day. Over the last scheme, which was 6 months, we saw £200,000 of funding go to 32 different groups across the area. Things, for example, like providing community meals, things like being able to create food boxes for people, really, really worthwhile causes. So if you are a community group or a community group, it's really important. It's not just the council, it's not just residents who are hit with the cost of living. A lot of it is our charities as well, and they're going to be facing additional costs with the budget. So I think it's really important to try and funnel that money down to a community level so it can be spent on meeting the needs of our communities. Right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the budget priorities and the consultation. So Mike, back over to you for this one.
Yeah, at the moment we're going out and consulting on the budget that we have to set in February, and so we're really, really interested to hear what you think, what your ideas are, and particularly what your priorities are for the budget that we do set. And you'll find on the website haveyoursay.bcpcouncil.gov.uk/budget, where you can actually tell us what you think. And these are read and these are taken into account when the budgets are set. So if you can do that, that would be great. But shall we go on to the pre-submitted questions?
We do, yes. So the first question that I have in front of me is from Andrew Warren on Facebook, and he has asked, what can be done about the number of roadworks and road closures in the area? Surely better planning can be in place to stop them conflicting with each other. Now, Andrew, I am a Poole resident, and at the moment things have been difficult for people across Poole. We seem to have a real glut of roadworks going on, and as someone who drives, I have been stuck in roadworks as well. The way I've been thinking about this, though, is that we also do rely on services. We rely on high-speed broadband. We rely on having decent roads that we can use. We rely on reliable water and gas. And I'm sure some residents in Poole were impacted by the burst water main the other day in Creekmore, which turned off water to a lot of residents across the area. So it's really important that we do roadworks to make sure that our facilities and our infrastructure keeps on working. However, one of the things that we can't plan for are emergency roadworks, we also facilitate for all other utility companies. In fact, 86% of works that take place are not actually done by BCP Council, they're done by the utility providers. And those utility providers have the right to dig up roads, and they particularly have the right when it's an emergency, and we cannot control that. So if there is a water main that's burst, or if a sewer collapses, or if there is something that goes on that is an immediate priority, we have to allow, well, we don't have a say in them doing that, because the consequences could be a lot worse. And in fact, that accounts for about 30% of all the roadworks across the area. They're the ones that are done under emergency. What I would say briefly about Poole in particular is we have a scheme going on, which is the Transforming City scheme. Huge amount of funding going on into Ringwood Road, and I'm sure I may talk about that later. I think one of our other questions is on that, so we'll get into a bit more then about what that is and some of the problems that it's causing, but what the outcomes will be. What I did just want to say, though, is that I use a website which is free to the public. It's called one.network. So if you type that into Google or into your search bar, you'll be able to see all of the roadworks that are planned across the area, as well as any emergency roadworks. It's a really good system for planning your routes. And I'm also, even if I'm just traveling across the conurbation, I still use Google Maps, because I know that there is potential to be problems along the route and congestion build up. So I try and use the technology that's available to me to make the better choices around how I travel. So it's a really good way to look up and plan your routes in advance. Right, so our next question is from Malik, who is on Facebook. Malik has asked, why did BCP Council ignore their own consultation on the closure of the Poole Park gates? So, Mike, I think you're going to answer this, and I might want to talk about it as well.
I am, and I just want to say, Malik, that we did listen to the consultation. We spent a huge amount of time and some not inconsiderable amount of money analysing the consultation. And what we did find out was that those people who lived near the park actually wanted the gates shut. And it was only people that lived far away, or at least didn't give their postcode address, that actually wanted to continue to drive through the park and use it as effectively as a cut through. And that's where we found that most of the replies came from. And so we felt that it was best that the local people who live nearby had their say, and therefore we decided on balance to close the gates, which we did. We've certainly our feedback since then has been very good, and that people enjoy the ambience of the park now with much less traffic, and people have said to us quite openly that they enjoy the new atmosphere. So I think, although it went against the majority of the people that in the consultation, a lot of the people that use the park on a daily basis, they very much enjoy the decision we made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And as a resident of Poole, I was born in Poole, and I've lived there my whole life. In fact, I learnt to ride my bike in Poole Park, which was very memorable for me. I would agree. From my point of view, parks are to be enjoyed. I do find it a bit odd that we accept having a road going through it. I think access is really important, and access remains, so you can still drive into the park to park. You just can't use it as a cut through. Okay, so we're going to go on to a question from Keith on Facebook. Keith has asked, could they answer how a council that has no money is able to carry out its road improvements works? So I'm very happy to answer this one. I think there's a lot to say around roadworks at the moment, but just specifically on road improvements. So we have pretty much rely on grant funding from government for road improvement works. We get investment in things like bus routes, in improving pavements and the walking environment, but also things like cycle lanes, improving road junction infrastructure, making things a lot safer for residents to use, whether they are in the car or they are on foot or on a bike. And largely that comes from central government. So it's not our council tax revenue budget that's going into those things. However, here in BCP, we do have some of the most congested roads in the UK. We have a huge number of cars for the population. We do, I'm sure you know, we get caught up in traffic from time to time. And in fact, I think one of the ways that we can change this is to look at how we can improve alternative use of our roads. So how can we encourage more people to use bikes and cycle? And I think particularly around road safety is a huge factor there. How can we encourage more people to use the bus? And the speed is a factor there. So with the money that we get from government, we are upgrading a lot of routes across the area, trying to improve that element of travel to give people more choice. And I think it's short-term pain for a long-term gain, because if it does improve the way our traffic flows, it improves safety, it improves how children are able to travel to and from school, it reduces carbon as well, then it will be better in the long run. And I would also just say, for example, Ringwood Road, which is going through a huge infrastructure change, there are a lot of issues there around the age of the road. So it's one of the worst for potholes. I'm always reporting potholes on Ringwood Road. It is crumbling around the edges. And actually, if we get money from government, which we are told to invest in our cycleways and roads and bus lanes and pavements, then I think it's really important that we actually do that rather than say no thank you very much and leave our roads crumbling so that no one can use them. So yeah, lots there about how our road improvements policy is sometimes quite painful in the short term, but does actually improve things in the long term. And of course, it's generally funded by central government. Right, so we have a question from Tony. Mike, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, Tony asks, when are we going to dispose of Poole Civic Centre and Bournemouth Town Hall to save taxpayers the financial burden of running these buildings? Well, actually, BCP has 3 civic centres, still has 3 civic centres. One of them, Christchurch, we made a decision a while ago to sell it. It's still in the process of being sold, so that's on its way. The second one, Poole, there was a motion went to council, and some people will be aware, which was amended, and what we've decided to do with that is to do some soft market testing, effectively to on the basis that we will sell it, or we will sell most of it and retain the outer bit of the civic centre that it was. Now that building cost BCP £19,000 a month just to maintain. There's nobody who works in there at the moment. It costs us that in business rates, in electricity, in maintenance, and sort of low levels of heating. And we can't afford to keep that anymore. So we must dispose of the Poole Civic Centre, or most of it, or significantly most of it. And we must get rid of that cost to BCP. And so that's what we're planning to do. We're currently going through this soft market testing, as I've just described, with the 2 options. And then that will be brought back to the council to decide what they want to do. But in terms of Bournemouth Civic Centre, virtually all of the staff, well, a lot of the staff work from Bournemouth Civic Centre or Bournemouth Town Hall, and they will continue to work from there. It has been consolidated quite significantly, but it is a central and is a good site for council officers to work from, and there was no plans to change that. I think we've got a question from Lacey Rose Parsons.
Yes, so this question from Lacey Rose is on homelessness and also asylum seekers or refugees. So why are we housing foreigners in hotels and giving vouchers to assist them whilst English teenagers, 19 to 24, who are homeless have been subjected to domestic abuse and can't even get put in the night stop or housed in emergency accommodation? Thank you, Lacey, for this question. And I think it's one that a lot of us feel quite close to at the moment, especially with homelessness being a real issue in our area with the housing crisis and so on. It is very difficult at the moment to find suitable housing. But if there is a particular case, if you're talking about a young person that you know, then I would really suggest speaking to our housing and homelessness team directly, or just drop a DM to this page so they can get some further information and respond to that particular case. But I would just say on the wider case around homelessness and rough sleeping, we are committed. I think every council wants to deal with rough sleeping and homelessness because it is unacceptable that we do have people out living rough. I would just mention that in BCP, we have had some real success recently around reducing numbers of people in temporary accommodation, people in single homelessness accommodation, by housing them into some of our new temporary homes that are coming online. We acquire homes from the market, we build homes, and for us, that's a real priority, making sure that we do have suitable environments for people to live in. At the moment, where we do have people living in things like temporary accommodation in bed and breakfast, which are unsuitable and actually often feel quite unsafe, it's really important that we can find the homes that we need to house people who are particularly vulnerable or who are struggling. Additionally, I would just say we're working with the Prince of Wales. I think there was a documentary on last week, which I haven't had a chance to watch yet, but the Homewards programme, which is the Prince's ambition to try and reduce homelessness. That includes prevention, which we're particularly focusing on young people. So making sure that there is the opportunity at the start of life when people are young to get themselves into the best position where they will not experience homelessness, or if they do experience homelessness, it's very fleeting and won't happen again. I would just say on asylum applicants, we don't deal with that as a local authority. That is pretty much entirely down to the Home Office, although obviously we do have a role in that they are housed in our communities. However, I would suggest taking that one up with your MP because it's not something that we deal with on a local authority basis. Right, so Nigel Ware on Facebook has asked, when will the planning office be back on track with phosphate mitigation, biodiversity procedure, and the correct number of planning officers? So for those who don't know, phosphate mitigation is really, really important to us because at the moment, without mitigating phosphates in our waterways, we are not actually able to build homes or houses or allow houses to come online in Christchurch. And this is from Natural England. They have decided that until we find a way to mitigate the phosphate level, we have to put a hold on planning over there. So I am really pleased to say that phosphate mitigation is now available. We are able to grant planning permission. It has been a really long time coming, and it's been really, really frustrating, no more so than for us as a council, not being able to get access to homes in that area. But we do now have mitigation in place so that developers can now purchase credits to be able to get their housing back online. In terms of biodiversity net gain, this is a really key central point in planning at the moment. It's making sure that when we do build something that it doesn't have a loss to biodiversity, that it actually gains. So including all sorts of things locally, but it could also be wider mitigation to make sure that it's not actually putting pressure on the environment and instead is contributing positively to the environment. So we're assessing applications against those new requirements which have come from government, and we're able to issue planning permission if the conditions are met in line with that legal side that the government have said we need to comply with. And just to mention about planning officers as well. So since I took over the planning improvement or the planning brief in my previous role when I was deputy leader, I have seen real improvements in that area. I'm really glad when I speak to developers, they're telling me the same. It seems things have improved quite a lot. However, we still have a little way to go because of things like the national recruitment issues. I'm told at the moment that we only have one vacant position, which is really, really positive. Someone's due to join us in February 2025. We have 4 other vacancies at the moment, so we're trying to get more people in to fill those planning officer roles and make sure that we have enough people to see that system through, because planning is such an important part of what a council does, because it's the only way that we get new developments, that we get regeneration, that we get our area progressing and building decent accommodation and decent homes. Right, Mike.
Thank you. Yeah, we've got a question from our BCP's old friend Alex McKinstry on X, and he says, does the Bournemouth Town Centre Action Plan fall within the remit of the Investment and Development Directorate, brackets in-house successor to Future Places, or either way, has there been any progress on its implementation? Well, the answer is actually no. The Town Centre Action Plan is a council-wide. It's not a single directorate, Alex. We're working to support businesses and encouraging investment into the area. Just to give you an example, we've got new CCTV, which has been installed in West Hill and the Horseshoe Common. Graffiti and chewing gum has been removed, and jet washing of some town centre locations. And we've launched a community guardianship scheme to support people using the nighttime economy, and a women's charter where businesses have signed up to a pledge and support and promote the safety of women. Over 15,000 hours of foot patrol hours by the town centre team have happened every year. And we've so far, as a result of the action we've taken, there's been a 6% reduction in ASB, antisocial behaviour, in Bournemouth Town Centre. It's a long struggle, but we do think it's having an effect. There you go.
Thank you, Mike. That is really useful. Right. Now we are going to be moving over to some of our live questions. So I've not done this before, so I'm just taking a look at what we've had come in. I can see one from Andrew Hardman. He has written, what is needed as a start? What is needed as a start is a properly experienced person as council leader, somebody with a few years work and life experience. Well, thank you, Andrew. I am loath to tell you that I'm not actually as young as you might think I am. I have, obviously I'm a new council leader, which for me is a huge honour to serve. Just to give you some background, I was elected in 2019 to represent my community in Newtown and Heatherlands. It was the community in which I was born, in which I've lived pretty much all my life, and which I love dearly. I think for me, where I've been reflecting on this is that we do need to have a real diverse mix in our councillor base. I think it is essential that we have people from different walks of life, from different ages, genders, disabilities, all sorts in our councillor base, so that we can be as representative of the community as we can. I may be a little bit younger than the average council leader, but for me, this is about my passion, and it's about my ability to be able to lead our councillor base and be able to make the right decisions on behalf of residents. And I certainly try and work in my community to demonstrate that. And I hope to be able to demonstrate that to you in my role as well. I won't go into my background because we'll be here all day, but just to give you my assurance that my passion is there. I want to do the best on behalf of our residents and really be the council leader that this area needs. So thank you for that question.
And just to emphasise the fact that Millie is supported by a cabinet, and actually we all very much appreciate what she does. She's a fantastic leader, and I thoroughly enjoy working with her. There was a question from Claire Wilkinson just before that, I think, asking whether why BCP don't poll BCP people. And there should be questionnaires through the letterbox with comments and comments boxes, etc. I think we do as much as we can in terms of consulting on the budget. Obviously, that would involve a huge amount of expense, something of which we don't particularly have at the moment. It would be great if we could do that, but unfortunately, finances don't allow it. But we do try and get out, and this is one particular reason what we're doing here, one particular way we're doing it at the moment through Facebook. But you can write to your local councillors, you can write to the council, and you can certainly in terms of what you think the budget should say. There was another one, Millie, if you don't mind, which I think is Koi Pond Bar at 1240, who asked the question about council tax in Wales, and were we going to do the same as what they did in Wales in terms of second homes? I think he was talking about, and I would just like to say that we're doing something similar. We're not doing exactly the same as what they did in Wales. We're doing what many councils up and down the country, and particularly in coastal areas, are doing, and that is actually doubling the council tax for those who have a second home here. So we will be getting, as of April, the year coming, 2025, we will be getting circa £6 million from people who have second homes here.
Thanks, Mike. I can see a question here from Leon. He has asked, stop putting cycle lanes everywhere, fix the roads that rattle your teeth out, then help local businesses, youth clubs, and those in poverty or without homes. So, Leon, your question absolutely speaks to me, because my heart is very much around sort of how we reduce poverty. I represent quite a deprived community in BCP, and it does frustrate me in the same way it probably frustrates you that we have a lot of money coming in to spend on things like cycleways or spend on infrastructure. I don't disagree. However, we do have roads that are in a bit of a state. We do need money to upgrade them, and we're not able to do that out of our own revenue budget. We just don't have the money anymore because we have lost so much in terms of council funding. What we rely on now are grants from government. We have had a commitment from the new government that they're not going to make competitive grants the way in which they do business with local authorities, and in fact they're going to be a bit more responsive to need rather than making us compete over money. However, the money that we do have come in is very much contingent on the fact that we do include cycle lanes, that we do improve road safety, that we do those complete infrastructure reforms to make our roads, last another 50, 100, maybe even more years. In terms of tackling, things like youth clubs and poverty and helping people who are homeless, like I said earlier, we do have a lot of support available for people through the Household Support Fund. So I would suggest getting in touch with us, Googling household support, or going to bcpcouncil.gov.uk/cost of living. So that work is going on, but it's the big infrastructure changes, it's the big, hundreds of millions of pounds which are going into improving our infrastructure, which is what's coming from government. Honestly, I have written to government. I have been working through my local networks. I've been working with my cabinet. I've been working with the MPs to raise the issue of our revenue budget and how we just don't have the money day to day to deliver the services that our communities really need. That is a priority for us as a council, to show government that we need more money for things like youth services, for prevention, for helping people who are in need. So it's also something that we're doing. I'm just not sure we're going to see the results just yet, but I'm still hopeful that we might see a little bit more in terms of our revenue budget.
I think there's somebody asked the question, I presume it's on X, about what is the financial impact of the recent increase in NI costs on the council. And that's a very, very good question. It's circa about £4 or £5 million extra that it'll cost the council, and which we will obviously have to find in order to balance the budget. It's not just the national insurance increase. There's also the fact that the national minimum wage has gone up as well, and that will cost the council about £4 or £5 million in itself. So the sum total of the budget, the costs of the budget to BCP Council is over £10 million, and that is a significant challenge to the council. If you think that just from the revenue alone from the council tax increase that we will undoubtedly have to make it of about 4.99%. That doesn't pay for that, and so or just about pays for that, and so it doesn't allow us any more money for anything else. So the challenges of the budget will be significant. We are obviously hoping that the government will come forward and let us have some money to pay for that. If not, we compensate us entirely for it. That would be ideal, but history has told us that doesn't necessarily always take place.
Thanks, Mike. I can see that we have a question from Peacock's Painters on X, and that is, let's put all taxes in one category and talk about that. Tax is tax, and we pay way too much. So thank you very much for this question. I think that there is something around council tax. I mean, a lot of people who are interested in politics or interested in how society works in terms of taxation will have a view on whether we should have council tax, whether we should have income tax, whether we should have all the various taxes around capital gains, VAT, all sorts. Now, I think there is something really interesting about how we can reform taxes in the future. What I would just say is that on a local level, we are confined by the government law on council tax. We can only raise council tax by a certain level. We can only set it based on the valuations that we had in the early 90s. So it's not within our gift to be able to make changes to that. However, it is something that I'm very interested in. I would love to see a much more equitable system. I think at the moment it doesn't quite work, but I'm also speaking to government about how we could potentially reform that system so that we can meet the needs of residents. Right, so we have a question from Roy McDonald, which is, about time BCP need to listen to the residents and not themselves. Roy, this is a really good question, because it drives home what our role is as councillors. We are elected, both Mike and I are elected by residents, and we are here to represent the needs and the views of our communities, of the wards that we represent. But because we're cabinet members as well, we have a wider remit to consider what the needs are of the wider community. What I would always say is, when there are issues that come up, use your ward councillors, write to them, say what your concerns are. If there's a particular issue, we deal a lot with casework. For example, I often have people contact me about housing issues or something around, a burst drain, it can be all sorts of things that we get asked by residents, and every single person has at least 2 councillors who represent them. So make sure you do raise your concerns with them. Make sure that you use them to voice your concerns, and then their role is to represent you in council, when not just on voting, but also engaging. And the other thing I would say is that every single resident has the right to come along to council meetings, to ask questions, to put in statements, to voice their concerns, on everything from planning to budget to all sorts of policy issues. So it is really worth using those mechanisms that are available to you to contact your councillors, speak to them, or to use, how to engage through the as the public with council meetings, so you can have your say on decisions there and then. Right.
I think there's a question from a Glyn Dickinson about the council tax for 2025, and he's asked, what exactly are we getting for it? Well, you're absolutely right. It will be going up, and it will be going up by the 4.99%. I haven't set it yet, but I can almost guarantee that we will have to put it up by the maximum. And the reason is, and I referred to it earlier on, is that the increases in national insurance and minimum wage, actually counteract all of the money, extra money that we will get for that 4.99%. So we will be using that just on that, and just on paying for that. And so we get no more money for anything else, any other pay rises, anything else. And so that's where we have to go through this, unfortunately, year after year, trying to reduce services, trying to make things more efficient where we can, in order to maintain some basic services that we got. I think we are very lucky in BCP insofar as we do an awful lot more than the statutory minimum. There are quite a lot of councils up and down the country who are just left on the statutory minimum. We actually spend a lot of money on libraries. We spend a lot of money on community events and cultural events throughout the conurbation. And so, we have tried time and time again to maintain those, but obviously we do have to make savings in order to balance the budget. There was another question, I think it was from Koi Pond Boy again, about a 4-day week, and it was asking, were we going to follow the Labour government's move to go to a 4-day week? I wasn't aware that it was a Labour government initiative to go there. I actually think I think South Cambridgeshire first of all went to go for a 4-day week, which was a Liberal Democrat administration, and actually got stopped by Michael Gove from memory. We have got no plans to do that, so we haven't got any plans to go to a 4-day week at the moment, unless it's shown to me certainly that it will be more efficient, but I haven't seen any evidence that we can do that.
Thanks, Mike. So I have a question here, which is from Claire. Hi, Claire. How many residents can't get to you because they can't get out or engage in social media? How are you engaging with the wider audience? You're not online, and those who are not online, and those without easy access to transport. So Claire, what I would say is that as ward councillors, we do try and engage with all sorts of residents. I have my phone number published online. People are welcome to reach out to me on that. I also have my email address if they want to contact me over email. But I also hold surgeries in my community, and I think pretty much all other councillors will have something that someone can go to. I would say also in between elections, a lot of us make a really strong effort to go and actually knock on doors and speak to residents. So you'll often find us surveying residents in our own communities, finding out what their views are, knocking on their doors and checking if they're okay, and if there's any issues that they want to raise. It's not necessarily political campaigning. A lot of it is more around our engagement as ward councillors. So that does quite often happen across the area. What I would say though is, my phone is there. A lot of people do have a phone still, even if they aren't connected online. And I also, I think you'll find some of your councillors as well, we put out regular newsletters to residents with our contact details on, so they can at least get in touch with us, particularly if they're socially isolated. The final thing I would say is that I'm very mindful of digital inclusion. I've recently met with Citizens Advice to talk about this particular issue where people are not online, or where they are struggling, with online forms and that kind of thing, and how we can make things more digitally inclusive. And I've been working with my cabinet colleague, Councillor Andy Martin, to look at that specifically. So we're keeping that in mind for every single bit of policy that we bring through as part of our equalities impact assessment, and making sure that we do have mechanisms there for people to get in touch if they are not online. Thank you.
I just wanted to pick up on a comment by Glyn Dickinson earlier. I think I answered the question about the 2025 council tax, but he ends by saying fly tipping everywhere. And you're right, there's a recent bit of fly tipping that's happened just near where I live. And it's a disgusting behaviour by people who obviously clearly don't care about their environment, and we do actually try and get rid of that as soon as possible and find people where we can. In fact, you might have heard that we got into the national news recently about being a bit too active in that respect, in terms of finding people for putting stuff on the pavement outside their houses. So we are trying. We have a program, and we have a plan to get rid of fly tipping.
Sounds like you had a fire alarm go on in the background there, Mike, unless you are suddenly running out because there may be a fire in the building. Right, so we have hit 1 p.m. I'm going to close the session there, but hope to be back with you in a month or so to answer some more questions on another topic, and I'll be joined by another portfolio holder at that point. But thank you so much to everyone who's joined today. Thank you for submitting your questions, and please do, if there is anything in the meantime, please do get in touch. Also, I know that our team will be working hard to answer your questions as they go through. So if you want to put anything else up, then our team and I will go through and respond to those as they come in. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining.